And I'm starting with a question. Are you ready?
Well,
So
I'm never quite sure about that, but go for it.
If you had to point to one thing that is the biggest vulnerability in the Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton nexus, what would you say it was?
WikiLeaks.
Well, WikiLeaks is a whole bunch of things, but I mean...
Oh, lack of character, illegal activity. I mean, name the gamut.
Sex, right?
Oh, that too.
that especially, it's activity with women. Right? That's their biggest vulnerability. All his philandering over the years, women claiming he's. Do
you think that's their biggest vulnerability?
Well, it's one of them. They've got a whole bunch of them, but that's the. So if you have a big vulnerability, how do you play it if you're a really smart politician? What do you do?
Well, you accuse the other party.
That's exactly right. You accuse them of doing what you're doing. If you're stealing money and they've caught you at it, you say, well, the other guy's been stealing money, and you get there ahead of the press, and so the story is, well, the other guy's stealing money, and so when it comes out that you're stealing, then it doesn't show up. That is what has happened. They made a concerted effort to go after Trump on the weakness of Bill Clinton.
Yeah. But on the other hand, you could say Bill Clinton isn't running for office. She is.
Yeah, but it's spillover because she has been an enabler.
Well.
And so that is the weakness. And they've attacked, of course, if they find anything else, they'll attack on that too.
Yeah.
They probably attack on Wall Street. You know, he's taking money from Wall Street. You know?
Well, and some new WikiLeaks things coming out soon, they're saying. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
It's a barrage.
Make that stick in any way.
Whether the American people are looking at it, but the thing of it is the news media has ganged up on Trump in ways that are shocking. Newt Gingrich and others said that we've basically never seen anything like it, how one-sided the press has been.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Yeah. Do you think that's partially because we have a candidate in that particular arena that is willing to say that is willing to come back and attack the press? I'm not sure I've ever seen anybody do that before.
Well, he figures that's the way to handle it, but most people, you're right, they just take it and smile and get on with it. But this has been an unremitting attack, but the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Boston Globe, several other media outlets. I must say the AP has played it pretty straight on this one. But I even saw the Weekly Standard, supposed to be a conservative thing. One of their reporters on the air the other day was just trashing Trump. I mean, vicious stuff. I mean, vicious. And so, you know, it is unbelievable, but especially the Washington Post, Bezos bought them, and I thought, well, okay, well, maybe we're going to get some straight journalism. Instead of that, they've gone in the tank for the left, and then the New York Times has lost all semblance of objectivity, all their reporters, all their columns. It's just unremitting. Well, anyhow, that's what's happening, but nevertheless, Trump is still fighting. You know, you don't know which pollster believe, but he's staying within the margin of error, and who knows what's going to happen a couple of weeks to go.
Well, if you had to use a descriptive word to describe this entire election, vicious, I think that your word would be
unbelievable,
correct.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, a Republican Party headquarters in one North Carolina county was bombed over the weekend. The attack started a fire in that building, but thankfully no one was hurt. George Thomas has the story.
Donald Trump is keeping up his accusations that the media is rigging the election with its bias in favor of his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton.
The election is being rigged by corrupt media pushing false allegations and outright lies in an effort to elect Hillary Clinton president.
Trump's running mate echoed similar sentiments, blaming reporters for ignoring what he called the avalanche of evidence against the Clinton campaign that has been showing up in the WikiLeaks releases of hacked emails.
The American people are getting awful tired of this two-on-one fight with many of you in the national media doing half of Hillary Clinton's work for every day.
And the Democratic vice presidential candidate questioned Trump's denials about the claims of those advances years ago.
Now he's blaming these women. He's making weird claims that, no, I couldn't have assaulted this person. She's not attractive enough to assault. How bizarre is that?
With just 23 days to go, some polls show Clinton with a lead, while others an extremely tight race among likely voters.
It's amazing that Trump is as close as he is right now, considering the one-sidedness of the news media barrage.
As both candidates prepare for the third and final debate, Saturday Night Live had some fun mocking the last debate, portraying Hillary Clinton as robotic.
Hi, Patrice. Let me start by walking over to you just as I practiced. Right, left, right, left, right, left, plant, speak.
On a far more serious note, the Republican Party office in North Carolina was bombed over the weekend, setting campaign signs, supplies, and furniture on fire. No one was injured. A message that said Nazi Republicans get out of town or else was spray painted nearby. Both Trump and Clinton tweeted out their support for the people at the office. The attack comes as polls show the race in the Tar Heel tightening. North Carolina is one of the key swing states, along with others like Ohio and Florida, that Trump and Clinton will be focusing on in the closing weeks of the campaign, as voters will be watching them both, including in the final debate this Wednesday. George Thomas, CBN News.
Man, it gets curiouser and curiouser, but nevertheless, that's the way it is, and we'll see. But I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the stakes are so high. It so transcends some dalliance with some woman or some claims of stuff like this or an 11-year-old off-the-cuff remark. We're talking about the future of America. We're talking about the Supreme Court. We're talking about the economic policy of our country. We're talking about jobs for millions of people. We're talking about the foreign policy of this great nation. And we're talking about killing regulations. We're talking about the loss of the Second Amendment. If the Supreme Court goes one judge, your right to keep and bear arms under the Second Amendment will be taken away. It'll be given to militias. That's what some of the judges are saying, that the Second Amendment deals with militias, not individual rights. So we're looking at tremendous freedoms that are at stake here, and it vastly transcends. But for the media to focus constantly on some allegation, proven or unproven, about some sexual dalliance, when you've got JFK doing the stuff he did, when you've got Bill Clinton doing what he's did, when you've got Lyndon Johnson doing what he did, and you go right down the line, the media just kind of kept quiet about a lot of it and swept it under the rug. Look at Clinton. He was actually impeached for lying about his activity, and they reelected. We put him back in. The voters put him back in office. He served 2 terms, and he wasn't a bad president, as a matter of fact. But he had certainly a deep moral flaw. But the media didn't bang away like they have at Trump. Well, the second largest city in Iraq is Mosul. Mosul was essentially a Christian nation, a Christian city, and it was overrun by ISIS, and the population has been brutalized. And now Iraq and Kurdish forces have launched their battle against this city today. John Jessup has that story.
Thanks, Pat. ISIS has been using Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, as its capital. Iraqi Prime Minister al-Abadi declared the military campaign on national TV. Thousands of Iraqi troops from the south and Kurdish Peshmerga forces from the north and east have begun to move toward Mosul. One Kurdish official says the military campaign may signal the end of ISIS in Iraq.
We're pleased that the military plans are in place in order to start the operation to liberate Mosul. That would be the beginning of the end of ISIL in Mosul, and we hope that we would be able to end this chapter of ISIS and its history in Iraq militarily.
ISIS captured Mosul in the summer of 2014, shortly after its leader, Abu al-Baghdadi, declared a caliphate and asked thousands of jihadis around the world to join. Now it appears the end of that caliphate may be in sight. Officials are warning, however, the Mosul campaign could take weeks or even months to complete. UN and humanitarian organizations expect up to 1 million refugees from the city and warn the battle may spark the largest humanitarian crisis in years. Pat, this battle has been a long time coming.
It has, and Chris Mitchell was saying it goes into the winter, it gets so cold, and 1 million people without the proper clothes, without the proper shelter is going to be a humanitarian disaster. But in the news, right hot off the wire, ISIS is saying we are going to send suicide bombers against the Kurdish Peshmerga forces fighting in Mosul. So they will be sending suicide bombers to blow themselves up against the Kurdish fighters. John?
Pat, a day after the United Nations marked Yom Kippur as an official holiday, the UN's Educational and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, voted that most holy sites in Judaism aren't actually Jewish. Chris Mitchell brings us that story.
In a vote of 24 in favor, 6 against, and 26 abstaining, UNESCO gave preliminary approval to a resolution ignoring the Jewish connection to Jerusalem's Temple Mount and Western Wall.
This is at the core of Jewish and Christian history, and yet there's this systematic attempt to airbrush the history out of the picture.
Students of the Bible know that the Temple Mount behind me has been the focal point of Christian and Jewish history for thousands of years. It's where Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac and where King Solomon built a temple according to the Lord's direction. But this Palestinian-sponsored resolution refers to the Temple Mount and the Western Wall almost exclusively by their Muslim names. On his Facebook and YouTube pages, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said the UNESCO theater of the absurd continues.
Even if they don't read the Bible, I would suggest that UNESCO members visit the Arch of Titus in Rome. On it, one can see what the Romans brought back to Rome after they destroyed and looted the Second Temple on the Temple Mount 2,000 years ago. There, engraved on the Arch of Titus, is the 7-branch menorah, which is the symbol of the Jewish people, and, I remind you, is also the symbol of the Jewish state today. Soon, UNESCO will say that the Emperor Titus engaged in Zionist propaganda.
Netanyahu said this decision would be like saying China wasn't connected to the Great Wall or Egypt to the pyramids. CBN senior editor John Waggy said the Temple Mount is really ground zero for the Jewish and Christian faiths.
It's also the place where David was made king of Jerusalem, of Israel, and where Jesus overturned the money changers' booths at the temple, and also where Satan tempted Jesus.
The U.S. joined Great Britain, Germany, the Netherlands, Lithuania, and Estonia in voting against the resolution. U.S. Senators Marco Rubio and Mark Kirk urged the Obama administration to condemn its adoption, writing, "This is just another attempt in UNESCO's disturbing trend of attacking Israel and delegitimizing the Jewish state and does nothing to promote peace." The spokesman for the Palestinian presidency said the U.S. should review its policies toward Israel, and Israel should recognize a Palestinian state with Eastern Jerusalem as its capital, with its Muslim and Christian holy sites. Oddly enough, there wouldn't be any Christian holy sites if there hadn't been Jewish ones there first.
This is just one component of a larger Palestinian effort within the UN to delegitimize, to rewrite history so that this becomes a justification for a Palestinian state, a Muslim presence on the Temple Mount, a capital in East Jerusalem, all these things. So they're working on those simultaneously.
A final vote on the resolution is scheduled for this week. But if more countries don't stand up for Israel and the Bible, it's set to pass. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, back to you.
The United Nations is a joke, at least the General Assembly. It is made up of all kinds of little tiny countries. Some wouldn't, hold a teacup full of Texas. And they have a vote, a single vote in the General Assembly. They have voted consistently in the Arab cause. They have voted consistently against Israel. Their resolutions are absolutely absurd, and yet they're filled with anti-Jewish, anti-Israel propaganda. We and the United States pick up a good part of the budget for the United Nations. We've heard 40%, 50%, even 60% of their money comes from us. And I think the time has come that we say, look, this outfit has outlived its usefulness. It was set up after World War II. It has one group that has the voting power. Then it's got this big assembly that is sort of a debating arena. But it's lost its legitimacy. And I think the time has come for the U.S., is what I suggested some time ago, the Council on Foreign Policy made a speech, that we should have a community of democratic nations, a new United Nations of democratic nations, and keep the dictators out and keep the Muslim military and religious groups out unless they recognize democratic norms. And I think it's got to be done. But the United States can't just keep feeding that beast. It's just, we can't do it. I mean, we cut off the lifeline. Those people live like kings up in New York. Their salaries are way, way more than we pay our State Department. And they live in luxury, and they make these silly votes. And, you know, they do it on our dime. It's wrong, what they're doing up there. Well, John, what's next?
Pat, in health news, if you're going to exercise, try not to do it when you're too angry. New research shows vigorous exercise when you're upset triples the risk of heart attack. And Lori Johnson explains why.
Next time you're piping mad, cool off a bit before hitting the gym. A new study shows anger plus heavy exercise can be a deadly combination.
When angry, they shouldn't be involving themselves in extreme physical exertion. You don't get angry, furious, and then chop a stack of wood.
The Canadian study examined more than 12,000 people, mostly men, with an average age of 58.
Researchers found extreme anger doubles the risk of having a heart attack. So does vigorous exercise. But put them together and the risk triples.
The authors of the study point out quite correctly that regular physical exercise is extremely important for heart health and for general health. They're not talking about regular physical exercise, they're talking about extreme physical exertion, especially when accompanied by extreme anger.
The research shows the heart attack usually happens within an hour of the angry exercise and most often occurs between 6 at night and midnight.
Those two things together triple the risk for someone to have a heart attack, especially if you're middle-aged, if you have cardiac risk factors. People need to be careful.
So for better heart health, learn to control your anger and stick to regular exercise. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thanks, Lori. Pat, this just stresses the importance of anger management.
Well, it stresses the importance of the wisdom of the Bible. The Bible says, be angry, but don't sin. The Bible also says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. So if you're mad when you go to bed, you might have a heart attack. The Bible knows. You just listen to what it has to say. Terry, you wouldn't think of having a fight and going to bed angry, would you?
Oh, heavens, no. Nor would I think of having a fight and getting on an exercise bike. I refrain from those things.